Alright guys, in today's video we have more PlayStation news, rumors, and information to go over and discuss. So before we get into these topics, do me a favor and hit the like button to help this video out and show it your support. And if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers, so I would definitely appreciate that. We're starting here though with some interesting conversation that's happening regarding the Blue Point Games acquisition. Now, for those who aren't aware, this is something that was apparently spoiled by Sony's own Japan PlayStation Twitter account. They accidentally revealed that Sony had acquired Blue Point Games when they were supposed to announce that they had acquired Housemarque. Obviously, the tweet was quickly deleted and updated, but this led many people to believe that, there's really no way that a mistake like that happens, right? There was a whole new image that showed it, and yeah, it's clearly something that happened, and I'm sure that Sony is not happy at whoever accidentally messed that up. But since that happened, Blue Point Games updated their Twitter bio and their job listings to say that they're fully independent, and this has led some to believe that, well, maybe it really was a mistake. Now, we have an interesting update coming from the individual on Twitter known as Special Nick. We have talked about this person recently because this is the same person who let us know about the Ghost of Tsushima expansion, and it turns out they were correct about that. So wherever they're getting their information from, or whoever their source is, they're definitely good for some stuff anyway. And so I think we can look at this individual as a relatively credible insider with some of the stuff that they're sharing. And so he quote tweets himself, and the tweet that he's quoting, he said, "I'm not sure how much is going to leak from Sony's show. I know there's one big surprise that hasn't yet, and hopefully for those who don't like to be spoiled, it stays that way." Now, he updated it by saying, "So it seems Sony Japan Twitter already spoiled the surprise because I was just now told the surprise was Blue Point being acquired." And so this is pretty much, the closest thing to further confirmation we're going to get that, yeah, Blue Point Games was picked up by Sony. I don't necessarily know that I needed this to feel confident in that. Again, all you have to do is look at the image that was made by Sony's Japan Twitter team. You don't make an image like that by accident. You don't have a mix-up like that by accident. So that image is obviously there, ready to go for the announcement. But what's interesting to me about this is that, the way it's being talked about, like this was the big surprise. And I don't think that's the only surprise, obviously. I don't think Sony would plan to have an event and take a moment to announce the acquisition of Blue Point Games during that event. Microsoft has done this multiple times in the past, where at certain events, they'll actually have dedicated studio acquisition announcements, but no game reveals or announcements alongside them. I think in this case, what's going to happen is Sony is going to either announce that they've acquired Blue Point Games and then show their next game, what they're working on, or it's going to be the other way around. They show their next game and then they're going to announce that they're also acquired and are a PlayStation first-party studio. And I firmly believe, honestly I do, that Blue Point Games is working on either a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake from the ground up, or possibly multiple Metal Gear Solid remakes that will come in some type of compilation. I really believe this is what they're doing, and I think that, looking at Sony and the way they like to operate, the way they like to do things, if they were to save this studio acquisition announcement for their upcoming event, they're definitely going to want to show or reveal what Blue Point Games is working on next. Now, I could be completely wrong, and I could also be wrong about, believing it's going to be a Metal Gear Solid remake, but that's what I'm expecting. And, I think it's worth noting here that it seems Sony is getting more serious about acquiring more studios, and I don't think it's going to stop with Blue Point Games, and honestly, I hope it doesn't, because the next thing we're going to talk about lets us know that these studios that we kind of think about as free agents, even though they're close to Sony, they're still free agents. Just because they're close with Sony and they're partnered with Sony doesn't mean there aren't other publishers looking to try to scoop them up. And so that's what we're going to talk about now. We're talking about Housemarque and how they have confirmed that there were multiple bidders for their studio. There were multiple publishers fighting to try to acquire them. And I talked about this recently. I said, I think it's getting to a point where I know Sony wants to keep reiterating organic growth and they're not in an arms race or anything like that. But the reality is, we're seeing the gaming industry just kind of shift and change, and we're seeing the consolidation of it. And I think it's obvious by now that Sony's hand is going to be forced. I don't know whether or not Sony would have tried to acquire Housemarque if other publishers weren't trying to acquire them. But regardless, it lets us know that these publishers such as Housemarque and Bluepoint Games and others that are associated with Sony, yeah, there are other publishers out there that are going to try to scoop them up. So it's in Sony's best interest to make sure that doesn't happen. And so we have the co-founder of Housemarque letting us know some of the potential publishers that were trying to acquire them alongside Sony. And they're saying it's the usual suspects, that is, major players in the field from China, Sweden, and the United States. He goes on to say, I have to say that there's a very special spring behind us, and the fact that we have been competing even feels a little surreal. The co-founder added, this deal gives us the financial freedom to develop the company towards the best gaming studios in the world. It allows us to create new gaming experiences that are even bigger and more ambitious. So I thought this was incredibly interesting because I can't help but feel that Microsoft was definitely one of the publishers that potentially was trying to get their hands on Housemarque, and I couldn't blame them for trying to do that after what we see with Returnal and knowing that they are not a Sony first-party studio. But, we also have to think maybe Tencent was trying to get in on it as well. And honestly, I am very happy that Sony stepped in and did whatever they had to do to make sure that that wasn't going to happen. I can't help but feel that, Housemarque wanted to go with Sony, right? I say this because they have a long history with them, and one of the things we've heard when it comes to the development of Returnal is that Sony was pretty hands-off. In fact, the only thing Sony really did was say, like, we actually really like what you guys are doing. We think you can make it even bigger and even better, and we're going to help fund you to be able to do that and achieve that. And it worked out really well for them because, as the co-founder's saying here, that now that they're a first-party PlayStation studio, the sky's the limit for them. They're going to be able to go as big and as ambitious as they want, and that is just very exciting to me. And yeah, I feel like there's a reason why Sony has some of the most talented developers in the world. It seems like what Sony does, the type of culture, development culture they have, and the way they manage their development teams, it seems to genuinely attract some top tier talent. So they're clearly doing something very right. And it would have been extremely disappointing if, Microsoft or Tencent or somebody else ended up getting Housemarque, because in my opinion, Housemarque belongs with Sony. I think even Housemarque themselves would agree with that, right? So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to let you guys know about this. It kind of makes you wonder what other studios are kind of up for, grabs right now that Sony may be trying to, make sure that, hey, we want to get these guys. We don't want to risk them going somewhere else. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. So yeah, I will say that I think Sony should continue to try to bring on more studios that make the most sense. I know they said they're not in an arms race or anything, but let's face it, these studios are being bought up left and right, and Sony has to be part of that, whether they want to or not, in my opinion, if they want to, continue to not lose out on potentially big games that they, would expect to have on their platform. But moving on from that, I want to take a moment to highlight something that I think is pretty important, because there's been a lot of conversation around this particular topic, and I'm not here to necessarily give my opinion on it because I already did that. You should all know by now how I feel about it, but I want to show you some interesting data that should make things more clear and help make people understand the reality of the situation. I try to explain this all the time, where sometimes it's not so much about how you personally feel about it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that's important. You need to have your own feelings and your own opinions on things, but you can't ignore the facts, right? And so what I'm talking about is Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. I noticed the other day it was at the number 40 spot on Amazon's bestsellers for all video games, which is pretty good, right? For a full $70 game, that's pretty good. But I also noticed that for the PlayStation 5 in particular, it is at the number 1 spot, which means there are millions of people pre-ordering Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, and it's going to sell extremely well. I wanted to point this out because what you are seeing are PlayStation 5 owners speaking with their wallets. I understand that there are those who are upset about the director's cut thing and the way Sony's going about it. I understand that not everybody's going to be on board with it, and that's fine. As I said, I think you should have your own personal opinion and your own feelings, but you can't ignore the reality. I try to explain to people that Sony's going to continue to do this because it sells, and there are a lot of people like myself who are very excited to play this game on the PS5 and experience the new expansion and all the upgrades and whatnot. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight this here and let you know that, again, PlayStation 5 owners are speaking with their wallets. If this wasn't at the #1 spot, if this wasn't going to sell millions of copies and it was kind of nowhere to be seen, I think there'll be a clear sign that, yeah, most people don't want this, most people don't care about it, but we're seeing the literal opposite of that. You know, there's people that are going to enjoy it, there's people that want it, there's demand for it, the market speaks. I've been trying to make this clear, and so there you go. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is going to, you know, do just fine, and yeah, just wanted to take a moment to let you guys know about that. But we're going to move along here and talk about Sony's Bend studio, because we know they're working on a new IP and we have some new information regarding this IP. Granted, it's nothing major, but still something that I think a lot of you will want to know about, and that is the fact that it will have some type of multiplayer element. It could be a full multiplayer game, but I don't think that's likely. It could be a full multiplayer component, or again, just maybe some basic multiplayer elements. But there was a job advertisement that was published by Bend Studio about a month ago, but it was just recently discovered, where they're looking for a senior network programmer. And again, this isn't anything major. It doesn't reveal too much about the game other than the fact that it is going to include some type of online multiplayer of some sort. For some people, that may get you excited. For others, not so much. But either way, I am going to be interested to see what this is. We're seeing a trend with a lot of PlayStation studios where they're either beginning to add multiplayer to their games, or they're even developing standalone multiplayer games. And I'm going to be interested to see what they end up producing. But we're going to close out this video by talking about more game sales and some data, because it's very interesting to me. There's a headline here from Push Square, and it says, in the UK, 96% of Dark Alliance's physical sales were on PS5 and PS4. 96%. This is unheard of. So it says it's not unusual to see the physical sales of new releases skew heavily in favor of PlayStation in the UK, but the emergence of Xbox Game Pass is making the splits ridiculous. Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance, which launched in Britain last week, generated 54% of its boxed copy sales on PS5 and a further 42% on PS4. That's 96% in total. It means that just 4% of physical copies in the UK were sold on Xbox platforms, an unprecedented split between console families. It is worth reiterating that this reflects boxed sales only. There's no digital data included here, and the game is included as part of Xbox Game Pass. And so it goes on to say, nevertheless, it's perhaps a sign of things to come as Sony's primary competitor continues to double down on subscriptions. There's been some suggestion from Xbox that Xbox Game Pass actually increases software sales, and while this isolated example certainly doesn't, bode well for that, it's increasingly looking like physical sales may be dominated by PlayStation moving forward. Now, I want to read an interesting comment that somebody actually left on Push Square's article, because I think it's interesting. It comes from Mr. Tennis 1990. And they say there's no way any company can survive on a platform with this kind of revenue divide. It's really a shame Microsoft has trained their people to not buy games and laugh at everyone else who does. Game Pass/DRM is not the future, and I hope it never is. Keep buying games, people. And I actually really appreciate this comment, because that's a weird, bizarre trend we're starting to see, where it's like, people are taking on this attitude where if you like to buy and own your games, especially physically, right? And that's something you like to do, that it's like it makes you a clown or something, or there's something wrong with you and people laugh at you. And, I do think it's a shame that Microsoft is kind of creating this type of condition. Now, that doesn't mean that Xbox players don't buy games. We know they do, but there's no doubt that there's a pretty good chunk of Xbox, players and Game Pass subscribers where it's like, this is clearly a trend we're starting to see. Now, what I would be interested to see are the digital sales, because maybe, and we won't know unless we were to get the data, maybe the overwhelming majority of sales for this game on Xbox were digitally rather than physically, and the split would be, much less dramatic there. But yeah, we're just very clearly seeing the divide between Sony and Microsoft continue to grow in terms of the different directions they're going in. And what's so weird about all this is, again, just the way people behave, right? Like, it's like I tell people who, are constantly complaining at PlayStation, like, stop charging us full price for games, stop asking for $70 for games, stop making director's cuts and whatnot, and this or that should be free. And it's like, I try to tell people, like, look, if you really don't like what Sony's doing, like, there's another platform out there that is trying to go above and beyond to give you what would be perceived as added value or a good deal or good value, right? And you're free to go there. Like, it's a free market. You can keep demanding anything you want from Sony. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, PlayStation players, a lot of us, in fact, I'd say the majority of us, we still just like to buy games and we like to own games. And I think Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is pretty good proof of that, but you also look at this and it's like, yeah, if this continues at the rate it's going, it seems like PlayStation will be the place where, games sell, at least physically anyway, primarily. Like, they're going to dominate physical game sales. And so, yeah, for me, that's important because that's how I buy my games. That's what I care about. I care about buying my games physically and owning them. So it is, it does make you wonder, what Microsoft's plan is in the long run to make Game Pass as well as the entire Xbox division profitable. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure Xbox is not really profitable for Microsoft. Everything they're doing now is more of like an investment. Like, we're going to bleed money now and, not worry about making a profit. So that way in the long run, we can make even bigger profits potentially. Like, they're in it for the long game, and I think that's fine. And they could still be successful that way, but we're still kind of in that period right now where it's like, this is pretty crazy, right? It seems that in this case with this specific game releasing on Game Pass, at least when it comes to physical box sales in the UK, it basically made it so that no one went out there and bought it, which, again, pretty crazy split to see. But there you go. I just thought that this was some interesting data, and you guys can make of it what you will. So let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. I will be interested to see what you have to say. Again, leave the video a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.